You're actually going to go, aren't you? Trinica Blake stared at the pristine wedding invitation in her trembling hands, the gold embossing catching the afternoon light streaming through her small kitchen window. Her best friend Maya's voice cracked with disbelief on the other end of the phone, but Trinica barely heard her. The elegant script seemed to mock her with every curve of its letters. Lucian Ward and Celine Hargrave request the honor of your presence. Mama, why are you crying? 6-year-old Marcus tugged at her worn jeans, his dark eyes, Lucian's eyes, filled with concern. Behind him, his identical triplet brothers Matthias and Michael peeked around the corner, chocolate still smeared on their faces from their after-school snack. Her heart clenched as she looked at them. These beautiful boys who would never know their father chose money over them. I'm not crying, baby, she whispered, though the lie tasted bitter. She was crying. She'd been crying since the invitation arrived 3 days ago, hand-delivered by Lucian's pompous assistant with a smirk that said everything. Maya's voice pierced through her thoughts. Trin, listen to me. He wants you there so everyone can see you struggle. So they can all laugh at the woman he threw away like garbage when you got pregnant. You know this, right? Trinica knew. God, how she knew. 7 years ago, when she'd told Lucian about the pregnancy, he'd looked at her like she'd announced she had a terminal disease. I can't have baggage dragging me down, Trinica. Celine's family has connections. Real money. You're just a pretty face from the islands. The words still cut like glass. Mama sad. Little Michael climbed onto her lap, his small hands patting her cheeks. She forced a smile, the same smile she'd perfected through 3 years of working double shifts, through nights when the boys asked why other kids had daddies, through moments when she'd sit in her car after particularly brutal days and wonder if she was enough. Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. I have to go, Maya, Trinica said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. If I don't show up, he wins anyway. He gets to tell everyone I was too ashamed to face them. But what will you weigh? How will you? I'll figure it out. The determination in her voice surprised even her. She'd learned to be resourceful since Lucian walked out. Learned to stretch every dollar, to make magic happen with thrift store finds and creativity. I survived him leaving. I survived raising 3 babies alone while he paraded around with his trust fund princess. I can survive 1 wedding. But even as she said it, her stomach twisted with dread. Celine Hargrave moved in circles where Trinica's entire monthly budget wouldn't cover a single pair of shoes. Where women sized each other up with surgical precision, cataloging every flaw, every sign of struggle. Lucian was counting on her walking into that lion's den looking exactly like what she was, a single mother barely keeping her head above water. What he didn't know was that 3 weeks ago, everything had changed. The phone call that shifted her world had come on a Tuesday morning while she was getting the boys ready for school. A crisp, professional voice explaining that her grandmother's property in Blue Mountain, Jamaica, the land Trinica thought had been lost to debt years ago, had been sold to a development company. The inheritance she never knew existed had been sitting in legal limbo for decades. She hadn't told anyone. Not Maya. Not her mother. Not even her boys yet. Marcus tugged at her sleeve again. Mama, the man is here again. Trinica's breath caught. Through the kitchen window, she could see the sleek black car parked across the street, the same one that had appeared every day this week. The driver never got out, never approached, just watched. What man, baby? The one with the nice car. He waves sometimes. Her blood turned to ice. Lucian wouldn't, would he? Was he having her watched, making sure she was still the broken woman he wanted to display at his wedding? Making sure she hadn't somehow found her footing in the years since he'd torn her life apart. The invitation crinkled in her grip as a terrible, wonderful idea began to form. Lucian wanted a show. Wanted to parade his abandoned ex-wife in front of his elite friends like a cautionary tale. She'd give him a show he'd never forget. Maya, she said, cutting off her friend's worried rambling. I need you to watch the boys this Saturday. And I need you to trust me when I say that Lucian Ward has no idea what's coming for him. Because the man who had called her worthless, who had chosen status over love, who had thrown away his own children for a chance at climbing social ladders, was about to learn that some women don't break, they transform. And Trinica Blake was done being underestimated. That evening, after the boys were finally asleep, Trinica sat at her kitchen table surrounded by scattered papers, bank statements, legal documents, and a thick manila envelope she'd been afraid to fully open. The inheritance paperwork felt surreal in her hands, like holding someone else's life. Maya arrived with wine and concern etched across her face. Okay, spill. What aren't you telling me? Trinica poured 2 glasses, her hands steadier than they'd been in days. Remember how I always talked about my grandmother's stories? About the Blue Mountain property. The coffee plantation your family lost. Maya settled into the chair across from her, studying Trinica's face. The one your grandmother used to say would come back to the family someday. It wasn't lost. Trinica's voice was barely a whisper. The developers who bought it 3 weeks ago, they paid $12 million, Maya. $12 million for land I thought was gone forever. Maya's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. 12, what? The number still didn't feel real. Trinica had stared at the bank statement for hours, convinced it was some kind of mistake. But the lawyers had been thorough, the documentation legitimate. Her grandmother's land, 60 acres of prime Blue Mountain coffee territory, had been tied up in a legal dispute between the Jamaican government and various development companies for 30 years. The recent settlement had finally released the funds to the rightful heirs. There's more. Trinica pulled out another document, this one bearing the letterhead of Duval Industries. The company that bought it. They want to hire me as a cultural consultant. They are developing sustainable ecotourism and want to honor the land's heritage. The contract is worth another $2 million over 5 years. Maya set down her wine with shaking hands. Trin, do you understand what this means? You're not just comfortable, you're wealthy. You're wealthier than Lucian's family. The irony wasn't lost on her. 7 years ago, Lucian had called her worthless because she came from nothing. Her Jamaican heritage, her grandmother's stories, her connection to the land. He dismissed it all as romantic nonsense that wouldn't pay bills or elevate his status. Now that same heritage had made her richer than his trust fund. But who's the man watching your house? Maya asked, her protective instincts kicking in. This is too much of a coincidence, right before the wedding. Trinica had wondered the same thing. The timing felt deliberate, almost orchestrated. I called the lawyers today. They said the primary investor in Duval Industries specifically requested to meet with me. His name is Cassian Duval. The Cassian Duval. Maya's eyes widened. Trin, that man owns half the Caribbean. His family built resorts, shipping companies, tech firms. Why would he want to meet you personally? Before Trinica could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Blake, I hope I haven't alarmed you with my presence. I've been hoping for the right moment to introduce myself. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow morning? C. Duval. Maya leaned over to read the message, her mouth falling open. He's been the one watching your house. This billionaire has been sitting outside your home like some lovesick teenager. Something warm and terrifying fluttered in Trinica's chest. She thought of the sleek car, the way it appeared every morning just as she was getting the boys ready for school. Had he been watching her routine? Learning about her life? This is insane, she whispered, typing back a simple yes before she could lose her nerve. Maya grabbed her hands across the table. Trin, listen to me. Rich men don't just give money to poor women out of kindness. What does he want? The question hung in the air like smoke. Trinica had learned to be suspicious of men's motives, especially wealthy ones. Lucian had taught her that lesson brutally. But something about Cassion's approach felt different. Patient. Respectful. He'd been watching but not intruding, waiting for permission rather than demanding access. Her phone rang, jolting both women. Lucian's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Maya warned, but Trinica was already sliding to accept. What do you want, Lucian? His voice was smooth, practiced, the same tone he'd used when they first met. Hello, beautiful. I wanted to make sure you got my invitation. I got it. Good. I wasn't sure you'd still be at the same address. Still in that little house in Spanish Town. The condescension dripped through the phone. Still struggling to make ends meet. Trinica closed her eyes, remembering why she'd fallen for that voice once. Lucian Ward had been magnetic, tall, confident, with eyes that made her feel like the only woman in the room. He'd swept her off her feet during her first year in Kingston, pursuing her with a determination that felt like love. She'd been 22, working as a cultural liaison for a tourism company, proud of her heritage and passionate about sharing Jamaica's beauty with the world. Lucian had been 25, visiting the island on business for his father's import company. He'd claimed to be fascinated by her knowledge, her connections to the local communities, her stories about her grandmother's land. For 2 years, she'd believed he loved her for exactly who she was. "The boys are doing well," she said, dodging his question about her finances. "In case you were wondering about your sons." A pause. She'd learned to recognize his pauses. They meant he was calculating, deciding how much emotion to reveal. "They are not my sons, Trinica. We discussed this. I made my position clear." The casual cruelty still took her breath away. "You made your position clear when you chose Celine's trust fund over your own children. I chose stability over chaos. I chose a woman who could elevate my future instead of one who would drag it down." His voice hardened. "I'm calling because I want to make sure you understand Saturday's invitation isn't about reconciliation. It's about closure. For both of us." "Closure," she repeated flatly. "I want my friends to see that I made the right choice. That sometimes difficult decisions lead to better outcomes. Celine and I are building something real, something lasting. I want everyone to see the difference between choosing wisely and choosing emotionally." Maya was making slashing motions across her throat, mouthing hang up, but Trinica found herself speaking. "You want them to see your poor, broken ex-wife so you can feel better about abandoning your children. I want them to see reality, Trinica. I want them to understand that some people are meant for greater things, and some people." He let the silence finish his sentence. The line went dead. Maya reached across the table and gripped her hand. "He's a monster. You know that, right? A complete sociopathic monster." But Trinica was thinking about something else. The way Lucien's voice had changed when he mentioned Celine. She'd heard that tone before, years ago, when he'd talked about his father's approval, his mother's expectations. It wasn't love. It was desperation masked as confidence. "Maya," she said slowly, "what if Lucien isn't as secure as he wants everyone to believe?" "What do you mean?" Trinica pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Social media had become a window into people's carefully curated lives, and she'd avoided looking at Lucien's accounts for years. But now, his Instagram was a parade of luxury, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, weekend trips to Miami and New York. But something felt off. The photos were too perfect, too staged. And Celine appeared in very few of them, usually in group shots where she looked more like an accessory than a fiancé. "Look at this." Trinica pointed to a recent post showing Lucien at a charity gala. He's wearing the same watch in 3 different events over 6 months. "And this suit, I remember it. He had it when we were together." Maya leaned closer. "So, maybe he likes the watch. Lucien never wore the same outfit twice when we were dating. Never. He was obsessive about his image." Trinica clicked through more photos, her heart rate increasing. "And look at Celine's body language. She's not touching him. In every photo, there's distance." A horrible thought began forming. What if Saturday's wedding wasn't about Lucien's triumph? What if it was about his desperation? What if he needed Trinica there not to display his success, but to convince himself, and everyone else, that he'd made the right choice? What if Lucien Ward wasn't the powerful, wealthy man he pretended to be anymore? Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Cassian Duval. "I should mention, I'm familiar with your ex-husband's situation. Perhaps we have more to discuss than just business." Trinica stared at the message, her world tilting. Cassian knew about Lucien. Had known all along. Which meant this wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. And suddenly, Saturday's wedding had become something much more dangerous than a humiliation. It had become a battlefield where she didn't yet understand the rules or know who was really fighting whom. But for the first time in 7 years, Trinica Blake wasn't walking into that battle defenseless. She was walking in with ammunition Lucien never saw coming. The next morning, Trinica stood outside Kingston's most exclusive hotel, her hands smoothing down the best dress she owned, a simple black number she'd worn to exactly 3 occasions in the past 5 years. Cassian Duval had suggested the Blue Mountain Cafe in the hotel's lobby, a choice that felt deliberately ironic given her newfound connection to that very mountain. She'd left the boys with Maya, claiming a job interview. It wasn't entirely a lie. This meeting would determine the trajectory of her life, one way or another. The lobby was a monument to understated wealth, all marble and crystal and the kind of quiet luxury that whispered rather than shouted. Trinica had been in spaces like this before with Lucien, back when he was trying to impress her, but never as anything other than arm candy. Now she was here as an equal, financially, at least. "Ms. Blake." She turned, and her breath caught. Cassian Duval was nothing like she'd expected. The photos online showed a sharp-suited businessman with graying temples and serious eyes. In person, he was somehow both more intimidating and more approachable. Tall, yes, but with laugh lines around those serious eyes and an easy smile that seemed genuine. He wore jeans and a simple white shirt, expensive but understated. Mr. Duval. She extended her hand, proud when it didn't shake. His handshake was firm, warm, and lasted a beat longer than necessary. Please, call me Cassian. Thank you for meeting me on such short notice. He led her to a corner table, already set with coffee and pastries. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and Trinica found herself relaxing despite the surreal circumstances. I have to ask, she said once they were seated. Why the surveillance? Why not just call? Cassian's smile turned sheepish. Would you have believed me if I'd called and said, hello, you've just inherited millions and I'd like to discuss a business partnership? Most people would have hung up, assuming it was a scam. So you decided to stake out my house instead. I wanted to understand who you were before we met. Not your financial situation or your background. I already knew those details. I wanted to see how you lived, how you treated people, how you handled challenges. Something cold settled in Trinica's stomach. You investigated me. I researched you, he corrected gently. There's a difference. I watched you help your elderly neighbor carry groceries. I saw you working in your garden with your sons, teaching them about plants. I observed you giving money to a homeless man outside the grocery store, even though you clearly counted every dollar carefully. The invasion of privacy should have angered her, but instead she felt exposed, vulnerable. Why? Cassian leaned forward, his expression growing serious. Because I needed to know if you were someone I could trust. Someone with integrity. Someone who wouldn't be corrupted by sudden wealth. Trust with what? Destroying Lucien Ward. The words hung between them like a loaded gun. Trinica's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, steam curling between them in the sudden silence. I'm sorry, what? Cassian's eyes darkened. Your ex-husband cost me someone very important. 2 years ago, he convinced my younger sister Isabel to invest her trust fund in a guaranteed development project. He was charming, convincing, everything she wanted in a sophisticated older man. Trinica's heart began to race. She'd never heard Lucien mention an Isabel, never seen her in his social media posts. What happened? The project was fake. Lucien pocketed $2 million of her money and disappeared for 6 months. When we finally tracked him down, he claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that market conditions had changed, that he'd tried to contact her. Cassian's voice grew steel-hard. My sister was 23 years old. She killed herself rather than face the family shame of losing her inheritance to a con man. The cafe noise faded to white static around them. Trinica set down her cup with shaking hands. Cassian, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. Lucien is very good at compartmentalizing his victims. We kept Isabel's death quiet to protect the family's privacy, which means he got away with it completely. His jaw tightened. He used that money to buy his way back into high society, to court Celine Hargrave and rebuild his reputation. You want revenge? It wasn't a question. I want justice. There's a difference. Cassian pulled out a tablet, swiping to what looked like financial documents. I've been investigating Lucien for 2 years. His father's company is hemorrhaging money, bad investments, failed ventures, changing markets. The family's wealth is mostly smoke and mirrors now. Trinica stared at the numbers swimming across the screen. Debt, lawsuits, failed business ventures. But his lifestyle, credit cards and borrowed money. Celine's family has been funding his image while they negotiate the prenup. Cassian's smile was sharp. They think they are buying into old money and established connections. They have no idea they are about to inherit a financial disaster. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The wedding isn't about love. It's about money. Lucien needs Celine's dowry to cover his debts. If the wedding fails, if the Hargrave family withdraws their support, he loses everything. His reputation, his business connections, his lifestyle, all of it collapses. Trinica felt sick. Not for Lucien, but for the web of deception he'd spun around everyone, including his new fiancée. What does this have to do with me? Cassian leaned back, studying her face. You're the perfect catalyst. The abandoned ex-wife, mother of his children, showing up at his wedding. But not as the broken woman he expects, as someone who's surpassed him in every way that matters. You want me to disrupt the wedding. I want you to reveal the truth. About who he really is, what he's done, why he abandoned his family. Cashin's voice softened. I want you to show up as the successful, powerful woman you've become and let his own shame destroy him. The proposal was seductive and terrifying in equal measure. Trinica thought of Lucien's voice on the phone, his casual cruelty about their sons, his assumption that she was still the desperate woman he'd left behind. And what do you get out of helping me? Justice for my sister. And the satisfaction of watching a predator face consequences for his actions. What do I get? Cassian smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes completely. Whatever you want. New life, new identity, protection for your children. The resources to build something lasting. The offer hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Trinica thought of her sons, of the life she wanted to give them, of the woman she'd been before Lucien convinced her she was worthless. There's something else, Cassian said quietly. Something I need you to understand before you decide. Her pulse quickened. What? I didn't seek you out just for revenge. I've been watching you for weeks, Trinica. I've seen how you handle adversity, how you love your children, how you've built a life from nothing with grace and strength. His voice dropped. I'm asking you to trust me not just as a business partner. The implication sent heat racing through her veins. Cassian, I know the timing is complicated. I know this whole situation is insane. But I need you to know that my interest in you goes far beyond Lucien Ward. He reached across the table, his fingers barely brushing hers. I've spent 2 years planning his destruction, and 2 weeks falling for the woman he was too stupid to appreciate. The confession hit her like lightning. Part of her wanted to run. This was too much, too fast, too dangerous. But another part, the part that had been dormant since Lucien left, responded to the heat in Cashin's eyes, the promise in his voice. You're asking me to trust you with everything, she whispered. I'm asking you to trust yourself. You're already powerful, Trinica. I'm just offering you the tools to show the world what Lucien tried to hide. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya, emergency. Lucien just showed up at your house looking for you. The boys are scared. Where are you? Trinica's blood turned to ice. He went to my house. My children. Cassian was already standing, pulling out his phone. My driver will get us there in 10 minutes. Security team is already en route. Security team. She followed him toward the exit, her heart hammering. I told you, I've been planning this for 2 years. That includes protecting the people I care about. As they rushed through the lobby, Trinica realized the point of no return had already passed. Lucien had escalated this beyond a simple wedding invitation. He brought her children into it. And Cassian Duval, this man she'd known for less than an hour, had just declared himself her protector. The game had changed completely. This wasn't about attending a wedding anymore. This was war. And she was about to discover just how far she was willing to go to protect her family and claim the life she deserved. The black SUV tore through Kingston traffic with a precision that spoke of money and influence. Cashin's driver navigated streets like he owned them while Cassian barked orders into his phone in rapid-fire English and what sounded like French. Trinica pressed herself against the leather seat, watching familiar neighborhoods blur past as her world tilted off its axis. Security is already positioned, Cassian said, ending his call. But I need you to understand, if Lucien is at your house, it's not coincidence. He knows something. Knows what? But even as she asked, cold dread settled in her stomach. The timing, the sudden appearance after years of complete silence, the way he'd been so specifically cruel on the phone about her financial situation. Someone told him about your inheritance. About us meeting. The SUV rounded the corner onto her street, and Trinica's heart stopped. Lucien's silver BMW sat in her driveway like a predator marking territory. Through her front window, she could see figures moving. Too many figures for just Maya and the boys. He brought people with him, she whispered. Cashin's jaw tightened. Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't let him see how much this affects you. Men like Lucien feed on fear. They climbed out of the SUV just as Trinica's front door opened. Lucien emerged first, and the sight of him on her doorstep after 7 years hit her like a physical blow. He looked exactly the same, tall, lean, with that devastating smile that had once made her forget her own name. Behind him came a woman Trinica didn't recognize, blonde and sharp-eyed, followed by Maya holding 6-year-old Michael. Mama! All 3 boys rushed toward her, and Trinica dropped to her knees to catch them, her heart hammering as she checked each face for signs of distress. Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you? The man was asking lots of questions, Marcus whispered against her ear. About where you were. About our house. Maya told him to leave, but he wouldn't. Over their heads, Trinica met Maya's eyes. Her friend's expression was murderous. He said he had legal rights as their father. I told him he forfeited those rights 7 years ago, but he pushed past me anyway. Lucien's laugh was the same rich sound that had once charmed her completely. Now that's not fair, Maya. I was just introducing myself to my sons. They've grown so much. They are not your sons. The words came out harder than Trinica intended as she stood, keeping the boys close. You made that very clear. For the first time, Lucien's attention shifted to Cassian, and Trinica watched his expression change from confident to calculating to something approaching alarm. Recognition dawned slowly, like watching someone realize they'd walked into a trap. Cassian Duval. Lucien's voice stayed smooth, but Trinica caught the tremor underneath. What an unexpected surprise. Is it? Cassian stepped slightly in front of Trinica, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. I would think a man with your financial pressures would be keeping close track of potential opportunities. The blonde woman, who had to be Celine, looked between them with growing confusion. Lucien, who is this? And why are we standing in front of some woman's house 3 days before our wedding? The casual dismissal in her voice, some woman's house, ignited something fierce in Trinica's chest. She'd been condescended to by women like Celine before, women who wore their privilege like armor and wielded it like weapons. Celine Hargrave, Trinica said, stepping out from behind Cassian. How lovely to finally meet you. I'm Trinica Blake, Lucien's ex-wife, mother of his 3 sons. Celine's gaze flicked to the boys, then back to Lucien with something approaching horror. 3 sons. Lucien, you said you'd never been married. You said you didn't have children. It's complicated, Lucien started, but Cassian cut him off. Actually, it's quite simple. Lucien abandoned his pregnant wife 7 years ago to pursue someone with better financial prospects. Sound familiar? The air grew thick with tension. Celine's face had gone pale, and she was staring at Lucien like seeing him for the first time. You lied to me. About everything. Celine, darling, let me explain. Don't. Her voice was ice. Don't you dare call me darling right now. Trinica felt a stab of unexpected sympathy for the other woman. Whatever Celine's flaws, she was learning in real time that the man she was about to marry was a stranger. Trinica remembered that particular devastation. Mr. Ward, came a new voice from the street. 2 men in dark suits had appeared as if from nowhere, flanking the driveway. Security, Trinica realized. Cashin's people. I think it's time for you to leave. But Lucien wasn't backing down. If anything, he seemed to be calculating new angles, new approaches. His gaze moved from Cassian to Trinica to the boys, and she could practically see the wheels turning. You know what I find interesting, he said, that charming smile returning. Trinica calls me after 7 years of silence, begging me to take her back, and suddenly Cassian Duval appears in her life. That's quite a coincidence. The lie was so bold, so completely fabricated, that for a moment Trinica was speechless. But she could see the doubt creeping into Celine's expression, the way the other woman was reassessing the situation. I never called you, Trinica said, but Lucien was already pulling out his phone. The voicemails are quite pathetic, actually. All about how she's struggled since I left, how she's made mistakes, how she wants another chance. He looked directly at Cassian. I have to wonder what promises were made to secure such enthusiastic cooperation. Cassian took a step forward, and Trinica could feel violence hovering in the air between the 2 men. Careful, Ward. Your desperation is showing. Desperation. Lucien laughed, but it sounded forced now. I'm getting married in 3 days to a woman whose family owns half of Kingston's commercial district. I'd hardly call that desperate. No, Cassian agreed pleasantly. I'd call it fraud. The word dropped like a bomb. Celine went rigid, while Lucien's mask finally slipped completely. For just a moment, Trinica saw the raw panic underneath all that polished charm. Fraud is a serious accusation, the blonde woman said slowly. What exactly are you implying? Cassian smiled, and it was all teeth. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Your fiancé is approximately $4 million in debt. His family's company is 3 months from bankruptcy. He's been using credit and borrowed money to maintain his lifestyle while courting you. That's ridiculous, Lucien said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Celine, You know my family's position. Do I? Celine's voice was deadly quiet. Because suddenly I'm not sure I know anything about you at all. Trinica watched the interaction with fascination and growing dread. This was spiraling beyond anyone's control, and her children were witnessing it all. Michael had started crying quietly, overwhelmed by the adult emotions crackling around him. Everyone needs to leave, she said firmly. Now. This is my home, and my children don't need to see this. But Lucien stepped closer instead of retreating. Actually, Trinica, I think we need to have a private conversation. About the boys. About what's best for them. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Custody. Legal action. The kind of warfare that could drag on for years and destroy everything she'd built. Are you threatening her? Cashin's voice had gone dangerously soft. I'm protecting my interests, Lucien replied. My sons shouldn't be exposed to questionable influences. A man who preys on vulnerable single mothers, for instance. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Trinica felt the familiar shame trying to claw its way up her throat, the same shame Lucien had always been so skilled at triggering. But something had changed. She had changed. My sons, she said clearly, are protected by a mother who loves them, who's never abandoned them, who's never chosen money over family. She looked directly at Celine, who's never lied about their existence to secure a marriage. Celine was staring at Lucien like she'd never seen him before. Is it true? About the debt? Business fluctuates. Is it true? Her voice could have cut glass. Lucien's hesitation was answer enough. Celine turned and walked toward her car without another word, leaving him standing in Trinica's driveway with his careful plans crumbling around him. Celine, wait. He started after her, then stopped, apparently realizing he couldn't abandon the confrontation with Cassian. This isn't over, he said to Trinica. I won't let you turn my children against me. Your children. The words came out as a laugh. You haven't seen them in 7 years. You don't know their favorite colors, their fears, their dreams. You don't know Marcus wants to be a marine biologist, or that Matthias is afraid of thunderstorms, or that Michael still sleeps with the stuffed elephant I bought him when he was 2. Her voice rose with 7 years of suppressed fury. You don't get to call them your children now that it's convenient. Lucien's mask slipped further, revealing something ugly underneath. We'll see what a judge says about that. Especially when they hear about your new associations. He climbed into his BMW and drove away, but the threat lingered like smoke. Trinica watched his taillights disappear, her hands shaking with adrenaline and rage. He's going to fight for custody, she whispered. Cashin's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and steady. Let him try. We'll be ready. But as they stood in the aftermath of the confrontation, Trinica realized the stakes had shifted completely. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. This wasn't about revenge or humiliation or proving points. This was about her children. And Lucien had just declared war on everything she held sacred. Maya appeared beside them, the boys safely inside. Trin, honey, you need to know something. Before you got here, he made a phone call. I couldn't hear everything, but he mentioned Saturday. And lawyers. Cassian cursed softly. He's accelerating his timeline. The wedding isn't just about securing Celine's money anymore. It's about establishing himself as a stable family man before he files for custody. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Lucien needed to marry Celine to access her family's resources for a legal battle. He needed to appear successful and stable while painting Trinica as an unfit mother involved with questionable men. He planned this, she breathed. The invitation, the confrontation, all of it. He's been setting me up. Then we set him up right back. Cashin's voice was steel. Saturday's wedding just became the most important day of your life, Trinica. Because it's the day we destroy him completely. But as they walked toward her house, Trinica couldn't shake the feeling that they were all walking into something much more dangerous than anyone realized. Lucien might be desperate, but desperate men were unpredictable. And she was about to find out just how far he would go to win. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Beautiful children. It would be tragic if something happened to disrupt their stable home life. See you Saturday. L. The message was clear. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was about survival. That night, after the boys were finally asleep and Maya had reluctantly gone home, Trinica sat in her kitchen staring at Lucien's threatening text. The house felt different now, violated somehow, as if his presence had contaminated the sanctuary she'd built for her family. A soft knock at the back door made her jump. Cassian stood on her porch, silhouetted against the security lights his team had installed while she'd been getting the children ready for bed. "I know it's late," he said when she opened the door. "But I couldn't leave you alone tonight. Not after that threat." She let him in, hyper-aware of how domestic the moment felt. A man in her kitchen at midnight, her children sleeping upstairs, the intimacy of shared danger. He'd changed from his expensive clothes into jeans and a soft grey sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. "Your security team is very thorough," she said, gesturing toward the window where she could just make out figures positioned around her property. "I don't take chances with people I care about." His voice was quiet, careful. "How are you holding up?" The simple question broke something loose in her chest. "I keep thinking about what he said. About turning my children against me. What if he's right? What if I've been selfish, keeping them from their father?" Cassian moved closer, his presence warm and solid in the dim kitchen. "Trinica, look at me. That man abandoned you when you needed him most. He denied his own children's existence to secure a marriage. He doesn't get to play victim now. But what if a judge doesn't see it that way? What if they think I'm unfit because I'm involved with you?" The word felt strange on her tongue. Were they involved? This man she'd known for less than 24 hours who'd turned her life upside down? "Then we make sure that doesn't happen." His hand touched her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. "I won't let him hurt you or your boys. I promise." The intensity in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and fragile, it was overwhelming. When was the last time someone had wanted to protect her? When had she ever felt this cherished? "Cassian," she whispered, and then somehow they were kissing, urgent and desperate and full of emotions too complex to name. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers gripped his sweater, and for a moment the fear and chaos disappeared into something pure and consuming. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I know this is complicated. I know the timing is insane. But I need you to know, what I feel for you has nothing to do with Lucien Ward." "Then what does it have to do with you?" His voice was rough. "The way you love your children. The way you've survived everything thrown at you. The way you make me want to be better than I am." She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe that someone could love her not despite her circumstances but because of who she'd become through them. But 7 years of single motherhood had taught her to be careful with trust. "Tell me about your sister," she said suddenly. "About Isabel." Something flickered across his face, so quickly she almost missed it. "What do you want to know? How did she meet Lucien? What was their relationship really like?" Cassian moved away from her, running a hand through his hair. "It's painful to talk about. I know, but I need to understand what I'm walking into. If we're going to destroy him, I need to know everything." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she was 23. Just graduated from university, full of ideas about changing the world. She met Lucien at a charity gala. He was charming, sophisticated, everything she thought she wanted. Were they in love? She thought they were. He told her he loved her, that he wanted to build a future with her. The investment opportunity was supposed to be their first joint venture, sustainable development in the Caribbean that would make them both wealthy while helping local communities. The story felt familiar, too familiar. He used the same approach with me. The interest in Caribbean culture, the sustainable development angle. Isabel was devastated when the money disappeared. But it wasn't just the financial loss, it was the betrayal. She'd trusted him completely, believed in his vision, given him everything. Trinica's heart ached for the young woman she'd never met. "And you've been planning revenge ever since." "Justice," he corrected, but his voice lacked conviction. Something cold was crystallizing in Trinica's mind. "Cassian, how exactly did you find out about my inheritance? About the Blue Mountain property?" He went very still. "The lawyers contacted me when they were researching potential buyers for the development project. But you said you'd been watching me for weeks. The inheritance only became official 3 weeks ago." He turned away from her, staring out the dark window. "It's complicated. Uncomplicated." Fear was climbing up her throat now, sharp and acidic. "How long have you known about me?" "Trinica." "How long?" 2 years. The admission came out like a confession. "I've known about you for 2 years. The kitchen seemed to tilt around her. "What?" "When I was investigating Lucien, I discovered his marriage to you. His abandonment of you and the children. I've been keeping track of your situation." Keeping track. The words felt poisonous in her mouth. You've been stalking me for 2 years. Not stalking. Monitoring. Making sure you and the boys were safe, that Lucien wasn't interfering in your lives. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. She backed away from him, her hands shaking. You've been watching me raise my children. Watching me struggle. Watching me work double shifts and count every dollar and cry in my car because I thought I was failing them. I wanted to help. You wanted to use me. The realization hit like a physical blow. This whole thing, the inheritance, the business opportunity, even your feelings for me, it's all part of your revenge plan. That's not true. But his face was pale, guilty. The inheritance is real. Your grandmother's land was legitimately sold. To a company you own. To a company I have interest in, yes. But the money is yours, Trinica. Legally, ethically, it belongs to you. Because you engineered it that way. She felt sick, betrayed on levels she didn't know existed. You bought my grandmother's land specifically to give me the inheritance. You created the business opportunity. You orchestrated this entire situation. His silence was answer enough. God, she whispered. I'm just another pawn in your game with Lucien. No. He reached for her, but she jerked away. It started that way, I admit. But everything changed when I actually met you. When I saw who you really are. You don't know who I am. You've been manipulating my life for 2 years. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and furious. You've been playing puppet master while I thought I was finally getting a break, finally getting what I deserved. You do deserve it. You deserve everything. From you. The man who's been lying to me since the moment we met. She laughed, and it came out bitter and broken. Jesus, Cassian. At least Lucien was honest about using me. The comparison hit him like a slap. I'm nothing like Lucien Ward. Aren't you? You both saw a vulnerable woman and decided to use her for your own purposes. You both made me believe I meant something to you when really I was just a means to an end. That's not, he stopped, his face crumbling. Okay. Yes. It started as manipulation. But my feelings for you are real, Trinica. What happened between us tonight was real. How would I know? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How would I ever know what's real with you? You've built our entire relationship on lies. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number, but she recognized the tone immediately. Having second thoughts about Saturday? Smart girl. Call off your billionaire boyfriend and I might consider being reasonable about custody arrangements. You have until tomorrow night to decide. L. She stared at the message, the final piece of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. He knows. Lucien knows about your real motives. Cashin's face went ash gray. What? That's why he came here today. That's why he threatened custody. He knows you've been manipulating me, and he's going to use it against me in court. Her voice was deadly calm now, the kind of calm that comes after the storm has already destroyed everything. He's going to paint me as an unstable woman who fell for an elaborate con. A mother who can't tell when she's being used. Trinica, we can fix this. We. She laughed again, the sound empty. There is no we, Cassian. There never was. You created a fantasy and I was stupid enough to believe in it. The boys. Don't. Her voice cut like ice. Don't you dare mention my children. You've done enough damage. She walked to the back door and opened it. Leave. Now. And take your security team with you. I can't leave you unprotected. I said leave. When he didn't move, she looked at him with all the fury and heartbreak of the past 24 hours. You want to know the difference between you and Lucien? He broke my heart once and moved on. You've been breaking it systematically for 2 years while making me think it was healing. Cashin's face was a study in devastation, but she was beyond caring. Trinica, please. If you ever cared about me at all, you'll leave me alone. You'll let me figure out how to protect my children from the mess you've created. He left. The security team withdrew. And Trinica was alone in her kitchen with the wreckage of dreams she'd barely allowed herself to have. Her phone rang. Maya. Trin. I just got the strangest call from my cousin who works at the courthouse. She said someone's been asking questions about you. About your fitness as a mother. Maya's voice was tight with worry. Someone with a lot of money and legal connections. Trinica closed her eyes, the final blow landing with surgical precision. When? 3 weeks ago. Right around the time you got that inheritance. 3 weeks ago. Before she'd ever met Cassian. While he was still setting up his elaborate game. Trin. What's going on? Are you there? I'm here, she whispered. But she wasn't. She was nowhere, suspended in a free fall with no ground in sight. Because the man she'd started to love, the man she'd trusted with her children's future, hadn't just been manipulating her circumstances. He'd been preparing to take her children away. And tomorrow night, she had to decide whether to attend Lucien's wedding as his victim or his equal, knowing that every choice she made could cost her everything that mattered. But now she truly had nothing left to lose. Which, she was beginning to realize, might make her more dangerous than either man had anticipated. The next morning brought official papers served by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Trinica signed for them with numb fingers while her boys ate breakfast, their chatter a distant buzz she couldn't quite process. The legal documents were thick, professionally bound, and devastating in their clinical language. Petition for emergency custody modification. Allegations of parental unfitness. Evidence of inappropriate male influences. Maya read over her shoulder, her coffee growing cold. He filed yesterday. Same day he came to your house. Her voice was tight with fury. The bastard planned this whole confrontation. Look at the evidence list, Trinica whispered, scanning the pages. Photos of Cassian entering my house late at night. Financial records showing suspicious monetary gains. Witness statements about my erratic behavior and questionable associations. Witness statements from who? Trinica flipped pages until she found names that made her stomach drop. Celine Hargrave. Mrs. Patterson from next door. Someone named James Mitchell. I don't even know who that is. Mrs. Patterson testified against you. Maya's voice rose in disbelief. The woman whose groceries you carry? Whose cat you feed when she's away? Lucien can be very persuasive. Trinica's voice was hollow. He probably told her I was involved in something illegal. Made her think she was protecting the boys by reporting suspicious activity. Marcus looked up from his cereal, his 6-year-old face creased with worry. Mama, why do you look sad? She forced a smile that felt like broken glass. Just tired, baby. Eat your breakfast. But Marcus was too perceptive, too much like her. Is it because of the man who came yesterday? The one who made you cry? The question hit like a physical blow. Her children had witnessed her breakdown, had seen her world shatter in real time. How much damage had already been done? Boys, Maya said gently, why don't you go watch cartoons? Mama needs to make some phone calls. Once they were gone, Trinica let herself collapse into a chair. I'm going to lose them. Maya, I'm actually going to lose my children. No, you're not. We'll fight this. With what? Look at this. She held up the papers, her hands shaking. Lucien has documented everything. My struggles, my financial instability, the nights I worked late and left them with sitters. He's made me look like an unfit mother who's now involved with a manipulative billionaire. None of that is true. Isn't it? Trinica laughed bitterly. I did struggle. I did work nights. I did fall for Cashin's manipulation. A judge will look at this and see exactly what Lucien wants them to see. A woman too naive and desperate to protect her own children. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but when she answered, the voice was crisp and professional. Ms. Blake, this is Jennifer Morrison from Child Protective Services. We've received some concerning reports and need to schedule a home visit to assess the welfare of your children. The world tilted. I'm sorry, what? We have allegations of inappropriate supervision and potentially dangerous individuals having access to the children. We'll need to conduct an interview with you and the boys by end of business today. Today? Trinica's voice cracked. I haven't had time to get legal representation. This is just a preliminary assessment, Ms. Blake. If you have nothing to hide, it should be straightforward. If you have nothing to hide. The phrase echoed in her head as she agreed to a 2 p.m. appointment. Nothing to hide except the fact that she'd been manipulated for 2 years, had fallen for an elaborate revenge scheme, and had exposed her children to men with dangerous agendas. Maya grabbed her hand after she hung up. Call Cassian. Whatever he did, whatever his motives were, he has resources. He can help fight this. No. The word came out hard and final. I won't use my children as pawns in their game anymore. Both of them, Lucien and Cassian, see the boys as leverage. I won't give either of them that power. Then what's your plan? Trinica stared at the legal papers, at the official letterhead that could tear her family apart. I don't know. For the first time in 7 years, I have no idea what to do. The morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. Trinica cleaned the house obsessively, preparing for the CPS visit while trying to act normal for the boys. But Marcus kept watching her with those two perceptive eyes, and the twins had grown quiet and clingy. At noon, her phone buzzed with a text from Cassian. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but please let me help. I have lawyers who specialize in family court." She deleted it without responding. Another text, 5 minutes later. "Trinica, I can stop this. One phone call and Lucian's case falls apart. Please." This time she turned off her phone entirely. Maya left to pick up lunch, leaving Trinica alone with her thoughts for the first time since yesterday's revelations. The house felt different now, not like the sanctuary she'd built, but like a stage set waiting for actors to come tear it down. She found herself in the boys' bedroom, looking at the drawings taped to the walls, the books scattered across their shared desk, the soccer trophies from Marcus's team. 7 years of building this life, of creating stability from chaos. And it could all disappear because she'd trusted the wrong men. A soft knock at the front door made her freeze. Through the window, she saw a woman in a business suit, tablet in hand, looking official and intimidating. Jennifer Morrison was younger than Trinica had expected, with kind eyes that somehow made everything worse. Kindness meant she was here to help, which meant the situation was serious enough to warrant intervention. "Ms. Blake, thank you for accommodating the short notice. May I come in?" The next hour was surreal. The caseworker interviewed each boy separately, asking gentle questions about their routine, their happiness, whether they felt safe. Trinica watched through the kitchen doorway as Marcus struggled to explain why Mama had been crying, why the scary man had made her upset. "The children seem well-adjusted and clearly love you," Morrison said when the interviews were complete. "But I do have concerns about recent changes in their environment. The reports suggest some instability in your personal relationships that might affect their security." "What kind of reports?" Morrison consulted her tablet. "Allegations that you've become involved with a man who has a history of manipulating vulnerable women. That there have been confrontations at your home, with the children present. That you may be making decisions based on financial incentives rather than what's best for the boys." Each word was a knife twist. "Those allegations are. I'm not here to judge, Ms. Blake. I'm here to ensure the children's welfare. But I do need to ask, have you been offered money or other inducements by Cassian Duval in exchange for any kind of relationship or cooperation?" The question hung in the air like poison gas. How could she answer truthfully without confirming Lucian's narrative? Yes, Cassian had orchestrated her inheritance. Yes, he'd offered her resources and protection. Yes, she'd been manipulated. But she'd also been manipulated by the father of her children, and somehow that didn't seem relevant to anyone. "It's complicated," she said finally. Morrison's expression softened with something like pity. "Ms. Blake, I'm going to be direct with you. There's been a petition filed for emergency custody modification. Given the allegations and what I've observed today, I'm required to recommend temporary supervision." Supervision. The children would remain with you, but under court oversight. Regular check-ins, parenting classes, restricted contact with individuals deemed potentially harmful. She paused. "However, if Mr. Ward can demonstrate a stable home environment and financial security, the court might consider alternative arrangements." Alternative arrangements. The euphemism for losing her children. What would I need to do to fight this? Demonstrate stability. End contact with anyone whose influence might be considered detrimental. Show that you can prioritize the children's welfare over any personal relationships or financial opportunities. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. Essentially, prove that you can create a conflict-free environment for the boys. After Morrison left, Trinica sat in her silent house and faced the impossible mathematics of her situation. To keep her children, she had to cut ties with Cassian, not just personally, but financially. She'd have to give up the inheritance, the business opportunity, everything that could be seen as the result of his manipulation. But without those resources, how could she fight Lucian's legal team? How could she prove she was the better parent when he had wealth, stability, and a soon-to-be wife from a prominent family? Her phone, switched back on, immediately rang. "Maya, how did it go?" "They are going to recommend court supervision. And if I don't cut ties with Cassian completely, the boys might be placed with Lucian." "Fuck." Maya rarely swore, which somehow made it worse. "What are you going to do?" Trinica looked around her kitchen, at the art projects stuck to the refrigerator, at the growth chart penciled on the door frame, at all the evidence of the life she'd built from nothing. "I'm going to the wedding." "Trin, that's insane." After everything that's happened. Don't you see? It's the only play I have left. Lucien expects me to either not show up, proving I'm too unstable to face consequences, or to show up broken and desperate, confirming his narrative about my poor judgment. So what's the third option? Trinica felt something cold and determined crystallizing in her chest. I show up as myself. Not as Cassion's pawn or Lucien's victim. Just as Trinica Blake, mother of 3 boys who deserves better than either of them. And then what? Then I tell the truth. All of it. About Lucien's abandonment, about Cassion's manipulation, about what both of them put my family through for their own purposes. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I let everyone at that wedding see exactly what kind of men they really are. That's social suicide. The Hargrave family, all those wealthy people, they'll destroy you. They are already destroying me. At least this way, I go down fighting. Maya was quiet for a long moment. What about the boys? That was the heart of it, the choice that was tearing her apart. To attend the wedding meant leaving them overnight, giving Lucien more ammunition about her priorities. To stay home meant letting his narrative go unchallenged. I'll have to trust that the truth is stronger than their lies, she said finally. And that love is stronger than money. But as she sat in her kitchen that evening, watching her boys play and knowing they might not be sleeping in their own beds much longer, Trinica wasn't sure she believed either of those things anymore. The wedding was tomorrow. In 24 hours, everything would be decided. And she had never felt more alone or more afraid in her life. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number, last chance to be reasonable. Don't attend tomorrow and we can work out a civilized custody arrangement. Show up and I'll destroy you completely. Choose wisely. L. Trinica stayed at the message, then deleted it. She'd made her choice. Now she just had to survive the consequences. Saturday morning arrived grey and drizzling, as if the sky itself was mourning what was about to unfold. Trinica stood in front of her bedroom mirror, staring at a woman she barely recognized. The dress hanging on her closet door wasn't the designer gown from her inheritance money. She'd returned every penny to Cassion's lawyers the night before, along with a letter declining all business opportunities with Duval Industries. Instead, she wore her grandmother's dress, a vintage piece in deep emerald green that had survived decades in a garment bag, waiting for a special occasion. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for this moment, this choice between who she'd been and who she was becoming. "Mama, you look like a queen," Marcus said from the doorway, his small face serious and wondering. She knelt to his level, smoothing his hair. "Remember what we talked about. Mama has to go somewhere today to make sure we can stay together forever." "But why can't we come?" "Because this is something only grown-ups can fix." "But I promise you," her voice cracked slightly. "I promise I'll come home to you." Maya appeared behind the boys, her expression torn between admiration and terror. "Trin, you don't have to do this. We could leave town, start over somewhere else, and spend the rest of our lives running." Trinica stood, checking her reflection one last time. No jewelry except her grandmother's pearl earrings. No makeup except lipstick the color of courage. "No, I'm done running from men who think they can decide my worth." She'd spent the night writing letters, one to each of her sons, explaining everything in age-appropriate terms. Letters they'd read someday when they were old enough to understand why their mother had risked everything to protect them from a father who saw them as property and a man who saw them as leverage. "The custody hearing is Monday," Maya said quietly. If this goes badly, at least they'll know their mother fought for them." Trinica picked up her purse, her grandmother's beaded clutch that somehow made her feel connected to generations of strong women who'd faced impossible choices. "And maybe, just maybe, the truth will be enough." Maya hugged her fiercely. "I'll have my phone on, if you need anything." "I know." But they both understood there would be no rescue this time. No cavalry coming over the hill. Just Trinica Blake, walking into the lion's den with nothing but her dignity and her determination to protect her children. The taxi ride to the Pegasus Hotel felt like a journey to another world. Kingston's elite would be gathered in the ballroom where Lucien and Celine were to be married. The same people who'd watched her struggle for 7 years without offering help, who'd whispered about the poor girl Lucien left behind, while doing nothing to ease her burden. Her phone buzzed constantly, texts from Cassian that she deleted without reading, messages from unknown numbers that could only be Lucien's associates trying to intimidate her into staying away. She turned it off completely as the taxi pulled up to the hotel's elegant entrance. The lobby was a maze of white flowers and golden ribbons, guests in designer clothes moving like peacocks through spaces that cost more than Trinica's annual rent. She felt eyes tracking her movement, whispers following her path. The abandoned ex-wife. The woman who'd finally lost her mind. Trinica. She turned to find a woman she barely recognized, Celine Hargrave, but not the confident socialite from yesterday. This version looked pale, haunted, like someone who'd spent the night questioning everything she thought she knew. Celine. Trinica kept her voice neutral. I wasn't sure you'd still be going through with this. Neither was I. Celine's laugh was brittle. But my family has invested too much in this alliance to back out now. The invitations are sent, the contracts signed, the photographers paid. She paused, studying Trinica's face. You look different. Stronger. Desperation has a way of clarifying things. I keep thinking about what Cassian Duval said yesterday. About the debt, the lies. Celine's voice dropped to a whisper. I hired an investigator last night. Everything he claimed about Lucien's finances, it's true. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they wanted to cross. Trinica felt an unexpected stab of sympathy for the other woman, another victim of Lucien's charm, caught in her own web of family expectations and financial obligations. Then why are you still here? Because I have no choice. Celine's eyes filled with tears she was too proud to shed. My family's business is leveraged against this marriage. If I back out now, we lose everything. Lucien knows that. He's been counting on it. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Lucien hadn't just been manipulating Trinica and using Cassion's revenge scheme. He'd been playing a longer game, ensuring that even if his lies were exposed, Celine would be too trapped to escape. He's been planning this for years, Trinica breathed. The courtship, the engagement, the financial entanglements. He made sure you'd be committed before you learned the truth. Just like he made sure you'd be desperate enough to accept help from Cassian Duval. Celine's voice was bitter. We're both pawns in his game, aren't we? Before Trinica could respond, a new voice cut through the lobby noise. Well, the guest of honor has arrived. Lucien approached with his wedding party, groomsmen in perfectly tailored tuxedos, faces she recognized from 7 years ago when they'd been polite to her because she was attached to him. Now they looked at her with curiosity and barely concealed contempt. But Lucien himself looked magnificent, tall, handsome, confident, every inch the successful businessman about to marry into prominent society. If she hadn't known about the debt, the lies, the manipulation, she might have felt the old familiar stab of loss for what they'd once shared. You came, he said, his voice warm with false pleasure. I wasn't sure you'd have the courage. I almost didn't. The honesty seemed to surprise him. But then I realized this was my only chance to tell our story. The real story. Something flickered in his eyes, calculation, concern, the recognition that she wasn't playing the role he'd written for her. Our story. I think you're confused about what story you're here to tell. Am I? Trinica looked around the elegant lobby, at the gathering crowd of wealthy, influential people. These are your peers, Lucien. Your future business partners and social connections. Don't you think they deserve to know who they're really dealing with? His groomsmen exchanged glances, sensing tension they didn't understand. Celine stood frozen between them, caught in a moment that could destroy or define everything. Trinica, Lucien said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You're walking a very thin line. Think about your boys. Think about their future. I am thinking about them. Her voice was steady, stronger than she'd ever heard it. I'm thinking about what kind of mother I want to be. What kind of woman I want them to remember. And what kind is that? The kind who doesn't back down when threatened. The kind who tells the truth even when it's dangerous. The kind who protects her children from men who see them as weapons. The words carried across the lobby, and she could feel the attention shifting, conversations pausing as people began to listen. This was it, the moment of no return, the choice between safety and truth. Lucien's mask slipped slightly, revealing the panic underneath. You have no idea what you're doing. Don't I? Trinica reached into her purse, pulling out a manila envelope. Funny thing about investigation reports, Lucien. Sometimes they work both ways. His face went pale as she held up documents, bank statements, debt records, legal filings she'd spent the morning gathering from public sources. Everything Cassian had claimed, verified through official channels. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying across the lobby. I'd like to tell you about the man you're here to celebrate. The man some of you are trusting with your investments, your business partnerships, your daughter's futures. Trinica, stop. But Lucian's voice had lost its authority, become desperate. His name is Lucian Ward, and 7 years ago, he was my husband. The father of my 3 sons. Until the day he discovered I was pregnant and decided his children would be baggage that might hurt his social climbing. The lobby had gone silent now, every guest frozen in fascination and horror as the perfect wedding began to unravel in real time. He abandoned us for what he thought was a better opportunity. Left his pregnant wife to raise triplets alone while he pursued women with trust funds and family connections. Her voice grew stronger with each word. And now he's trying to take those same children away from me because I've become inconvenient to his narrative of success. Security. Lucian called, but his voice cracked on the word. But here's what he didn't count on, Trinica continued, ignoring his panic. I kept records. Every missed child support payment. Every broken promise. Every time he denied his children's existence to protect his image. She pulled out more documents, photos of the boys, birth certificates listing Lucian as father, medical records showing his complete absence from their lives. These are your sons, she said, holding up school photos of Marcus, Matthias, and Michael. 6 years old. Honor students. Soccer players. Brilliant, beautiful boys who still ask why their daddy doesn't love them. Someone in the crowd gasped. Another person cursed softly. The wedding party looked like they wanted to disappear into the marble floor. And this, Trinica said, pulling out one final document, is his petition for emergency custody, filed yesterday. He's not fighting for these children because he loves them. He's fighting for them because I've become inconvenient to his story of redemption. Celine stepped forward, her face a mask of cold fury. Lucian, is this true? Do you have children you've hidden from me? Celine, darling, I can explain. Don't. Her voice could have frozen fire. Don't you dare call me darling after lying about having children. After making me complicit in abandoning them. The lobby erupted in whispers, shocked murmurs, the sound of a carefully constructed reputation crumbling in real time. Trinica stood in the center of it all, no longer the desperate woman seeking revenge, but a mother protecting her children the only way she knew how. The wedding is cancelled, Celine announced, her voice ringing across the marble space. Effective immediately. Anyone who wants to know why can read the real financial statements my investigators compiled last night. She turned to Trinica with something like respect. I'm sorry, for my part in this, for not asking the hard questions sooner. Your boys deserve better than any of us gave them. And then she was gone, striding through the crowd toward the elevator, leaving Lucian standing alone in his perfect tuxedo with his perfect lies scattered around him like broken glass. You have no idea what you've just done, he said to Trinica, his voice low and vicious. I know exactly what I've done. She folded the documents back into her purse, her hands steady. I've told the truth. Finally, completely, without apology or shame. The custody hearing will proceed as scheduled, but now everyone will know who you really are, including the judge. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Lucian, next time you want to threaten someone's children, make sure you're not standing in a room full of witnesses with recording devices. As she walked toward the exit, Trinica heard the conversations exploding behind her, shock, outrage, the delicious scandal of watching the powerful fall. She'd burned every bridge, destroyed any chance of a quiet resolution, made herself the center of a very public storm. But she'd also protected her sons from a father who would have used them as weapons, and from a system that valued wealth over truth. Whatever happened next, she'd face it as herself, not as anyone's victim, pawn, or prize. Just as Trinica Blake, mother of 3 boys who deserved to know their worth wasn't negotiable. The elevator doors closed behind her, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt truly free. Even if that freedom might cost her everything. The elevator descended in silence, but Trinica could hear the chaos erupting in the lobby behind her, raised voices, shocked exclamations, the unmistakable sound of a scandal detonating in real time. Her phone, turned back on, immediately started buzzing with notifications. News travels fast in Kingston's elite circles, and social media moves even faster. She was scrolling through the already viral videos of her confrontation when the elevator stopped on the 3rd floor, and the doors opened to reveal the last person she expected to see. Cassian stepped inside, looking haggard and desperate, still in the expensive clothes from their first meeting but somehow diminished. Trinica, thank God. I've been looking everywhere for you. How did you? She stopped, realizing it didn't matter. I told you to leave me alone. I know. I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But there's something you need to know before the custody hearing. Something that changes everything. The elevator continued its descent, trapping them in enforced intimacy. Trinica pressed herself against the far wall, as much distance as the small space would allow. Nothing you say changes what you did. How you manipulated me. The inheritance is real. His words came out in a rush. Completely real. I didn't buy your grandmother's land to give you money. The sale happened months before I even knew about you. I only found out about it when my legal team was researching Lucien's background. She stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. What? The Blue Mountain property sale was legitimate. Your grandmother's land was caught in legal disputes for decades, but the resolution had nothing to do with me. When I discovered you were entitled to the inheritance, I saw an opportunity to approach you, yes. But the money was always yours. The elevator reached the ground floor, but neither moved to exit. You're lying. I have the documentation. The sale records, the legal timeline, everything. Your grandmother's land was sold to a consortium of investors 6 months ago. I only have a minority stake in the development company. His voice was urgent, desperate. I manipulated the timing of when you found out, manipulated the business opportunity. But the inheritance itself, that was always yours by right. Trinica felt the world tilting again, everything she thought she knew shifting beneath her feet. Why should I believe you? Because I brought proof. He pulled out a tablet, swiping to documents that looked official and complex. And because someone wants to tell you the truth herself. The elevator doors opened, and a young woman stepped inside, petite, dark-haired, with eyes that looked familiar in a way that made Trinica's breath catch. Hello, Trinica, the woman said softly. My name is Isabel Duval. I think my brother has told you about me. The bottom dropped out of Trinica's world. You're supposed to be dead. Isabel's smile was sad but very much alive. That was necessary for our plan to work. Lucien needed to believe he'd gotten away with destroying me, that there would be no consequences for what he did. Plan. Trinica looked between the siblings, her mind reeling. What plan? To bring him down completely, Cassian said. Isabel's been gathering evidence for 2 years, building cases against him for fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. But we needed someone close to him, someone with legal standing to challenge him. Someone he'd underestimate, Isabel added. Someone whose word would carry weight because she had nothing to gain from lying. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. The custody battle. You wanted him to file for custody so he'd expose himself legally. We wanted him to reveal his true nature under pressure, Cassian corrected. We hoped he'd make mistakes, create a paper trail, show his hand. But what you did up there? He shook his head in amazement. That was beyond anything we could have planned. Trinica stepped out of the elevator, needing space to think. The hotel lobby was in chaos, guests streaming out, staff trying to maintain order, photographers who'd been hired for the wedding now documenting its spectacular collapse. But she barely noticed any of it. You've been using me for 2 years, she said flatly. Both of you. We've been protecting you, Isabel said, following her into the lobby. Do you think it was coincidence that Lucien never tried to contact you before this week? That he never filed for custody until now? What do you mean? Cassian moved to her other side, speaking quietly. Every time he considered reaching out, something would go wrong in his life. Business deals would fall through. Legal problems would surface. He was too busy putting out fires to focus on revenge. Fires you set. Fires we exposed, Isabel corrected. Lucien Ward is a criminal, Trinica. His defrauded investors, laundered money, committed identity theft. We just made sure his crimes caught up with him at convenient times. Trinica's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Maya. Trin, thank God. Turn on channel 7. Now. She looked around the lobby until she spotted a television mounted near the concierge desk, already tuned to local news. The wedding disaster was the lead story, but the angle wasn't what she'd expected. Explosive allegations made public this afternoon have prompted the Kingston police to reopen several fraud investigations dating back 5 years, the reporter was saying. Lucien Ward, the prominent businessman at the center of today's scandal, is now wanted for questioning in connection with multiple financial crimes. The screen showed photos of Lucien being led away from the hotel in handcuffs, his perfect tuxedo rumpled, his confident mask replaced by panic and rage. What the hell? Trinica whispered. Detective work, Isabel said with satisfaction. We've been building cases for 2 years, but needed his public exposure to give authorities the push they needed to act. Your speech today provided that catalyst. He's been arrested. Fraud, embezzlement, and now threatening a witness, Cassian explained. Those texts he sent you. Legally admissible evidence of witness intimidation. Combined with everything else. Trinica stared at the television, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. The custody hearing. Won't happen, Isabel said gently. It's hard to file for custody from a jail cell. And even if he posts bail, no judge will award children to a man facing federal charges. The relief hit her like a physical wave, so intense she had to sit down on a nearby chair. Her boys were safe. The nightmare was over. Lucien couldn't hurt them anymore. But as the immediate terror faded, other emotions rushed in. Anger. Betrayal. The complex pain of being protected without consent. You manipulated my entire life, she said to Cassian. For 2 years, you controlled my circumstances without my knowledge. How is that different from what Lucien did? His face crumpled. It's not. You're right. I told myself I was protecting you, but really I was using you just like he did. The only difference was my intentions. Intentions don't erase impact. No, they don't. He knelt beside her chair, his voice rough with emotion. I fell in love with you, Trinica. That wasn't part of the plan, wasn't supposed to happen. But watching you for 2 years, seeing how you loved your children, how you survived everything thrown at you with such grace. He stopped, swallowing hard. I've never met anyone stronger. You don't know me, she whispered. You only know what you chose to see. Then let me know you. Really know you. No manipulation, no hidden agendas, no schemes. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. Let me prove that what I feel for you is real. Isabel touched her shoulder gently. He's telling the truth about his feelings. I've watched him fall apart for weeks, terrified of losing you, questioning everything we were doing because he couldn't bear the thought of hurting you. But he did hurt me. Trinica looked between them, these two people who'd shaped her life without her permission. You both did. You decided what was best for me without ever asking what I wanted. You're right, Cassian said simply. Completely right. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for that if you'll let me. What about my inheritance? The business opportunity? Yours. All of it. The contracts are already drawn up in your name, no strings attached. You can work with us, work with someone else, or tell us all to go to hell. Your choice. Trinica's phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize, but when she answered, the voice was professional and relieved. Ms. Blake, this is Jennifer Morrison from Child Protective Services. I'm calling to inform you that the petition for custody modification has been withdrawn. Given recent developments in Mr. Ward's legal situation, there are no longer any concerns about the children's welfare. Withdrawn. She felt tears starting, relief so intense it was almost painful. Additionally, we've received several character references on your behalf from community members who wanted to speak to your fitness as a mother. It seems your situation has attracted quite a bit of public support. After Morrison hung up, Trinica sat in the chaotic hotel lobby trying to absorb everything that had changed in the span of 2 hours. Lucien arrested. The custody threat gone. Her inheritance secure. Her children safe. And Cassian kneeling beside her chair, waiting for judgment. The boys, she said finally. I need to get home to my boys. Of course. He stood, his movements careful, uncertain. Would you let me drive you? I know you don't trust me, but... No. The word came out harder than she intended. I mean, not yet. I need time to think. To process all of this. His face fell, but he nodded. I understand. But Cassian. She looked up at him, this man who'd turned her world upside down with good intentions and terrible methods. Ask me again in a month. When the dust settles and I can think clearly. Ask me then if I want to know who you really are. A smile broke across his face like sunrise. A month. Maybe 2. Maybe 6. I don't know yet. She stood, shouldering her grandmother's purse. But ask me when I'm ready to hear the answer. When I know it's coming from me, not from fear or gratitude or manipulation. I'll wait, he said simply. However long it takes. As Trinica walked toward the taxi stand, her phone exploded with notifications, friend requests, interview requests, messages of support from people she barely knew. The video of her confrontation with Lucien was going viral, but the comments weren't mocking her as she'd feared. They were celebrating her courage, her truth-telling, her refusal to back down. That's how you protect your children. This woman is a warrior. Every abandoned mother needs to see this. She was sliding into a taxi when one final text came through. This one from a local number she recognized. Mrs. Patterson, her elderly neighbor. Trinica, dear, I'm so sorry. That man lied to me about you, made me think you were in danger. I should have known better. You're the finest mother I've ever known. Can you forgive a foolish old woman? The tears came then, not of sadness but of overwhelm. 7 years of struggle and silence, and suddenly the whole world could see what she'd always known. That love was stronger than money, that truth was more powerful than manipulation, that a mother's fierce protection of her children could move mountains. Where to? The taxi driver asked. Home, she said, thinking of 3 little boys who were probably worried sick, of Maya pacing the kitchen, of a life that was suddenly, impossibly, free from the shadows that had haunted it for so long. Home to my sons. As Kingston blurred past the windows, Trinica Blake realized she'd done something she'd never imagined possible. She'd faced down 2 powerful men who'd tried to use her for their own purposes, and she'd walked away with her dignity intact and her children safe. But more than that, she'd found her voice, her power, her worth, and no one would ever be able to take those things away from her again. The inheritance money was just the beginning. The real treasure was the woman she'd discovered herself to be, strong enough to stand alone, brave enough to speak truth to power, fierce enough to protect what mattered most. Whatever came next, she'd face it as herself. Completely, authentically, unapologetically herself. And that, she realized, was worth more than all the money in the world. 3 months later, Trinica stood in her new kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that actually opened properly, watching her boys chase each other through a backyard that was theirs, really, truly theirs. The house in Hope Pastures wasn't massive, but it was perfect. 4 bedrooms, a garden for vegetables, and enough space for 3 growing boys to be loud and messy and completely themselves. Mama, look! Michael burst through the patio doors, muddy and grinning, holding up a tiny lizard. I caught him by the mango tree. Very impressive, baby. Now let him go back to his family. She was making Saturday morning pancakes, a new tradition in their new life. When Marcus appeared with the mail, his face serious in that way that meant he had important news. There's another letter, he announced, holding up an envelope with official letterhead. From the court people. Trinica's stomach still clenched whenever legal mail arrived, though she'd learned to breathe through the panic. 3 months of freedom hadn't quite erased 7 years of fear. This letter, though, brought only closure. Lucien's parental rights had been officially terminated following his conviction on multiple fraud charges. He was serving 2 years in prison and would be deported to England upon release. The boys were legally, completely, permanently hers. Good news? Maya asked, appearing with fresh coffee and the kind of smile that meant she already knew the answer. The best news. Trinica folded the letter carefully. It's finally over. All of it. Not quite all. There was still the question of Cassian Duval, who'd been sending flowers every Friday for 12 weeks without any accompanying message. Just beautiful arrangements that brightened her house and reminded her that someone was waiting patiently for her to decide what she wanted. The inheritance money had made everything possible. This house, the boys' private school tuition, the college funds she'd started for each of them. But more than that, she'd used it to launch something she'd never imagined, a non-profit organization helping single mothers navigate legal challenges and financial literacy. Trinica's table operated out of a small office downtown, staffed by women who'd walked similar paths and understood the particular challenges of raising children alone while society questioned every choice. The viral video of her confrontation with Lucien had brought donations, volunteers, and most importantly, women who needed help fighting their own battles. You know he's going to be here soon, Maya said, settling at the kitchen island with coffee and newspaper. Who? Don't play innocent. Mr. Flowers every Friday. His month turned into 3 months, and you keep finding excuses to postpone that conversation. Trinica flipped pancakes with more force than necessary. I'm not making excuses. I'm being careful. You're being scared. Maybe. She transferred perfect golden circles to a plate, thinking about the business proposal that had arrived last week. Cashin's development company wanted to partner with her nonprofit, creating sustainable housing projects that included support services for single mothers. It was exactly the kind of work she'd dreamed of doing, the perfect marriage of her heritage, his resources, and their shared vision for community building. But it would mean working with him, seeing him regularly, deciding whether the man she'd glimpsed beneath the manipulation was real enough to trust. The boys ask about him, you know, Maya said gently. They remember him from that day, how he stood up for you. Marcus especially asks when the nice man with the fancy car is coming back. The boys don't need another man in their lives making promises he might not keep. And what about what you need? Before Trinica could answer, the doorbell rang. Through the front window, she could see a familiar figure, not Cassian, but Isabel Duval, holding what looked like a legal folder. Ms. Blake. Isabel's smile was warm but professional. I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but I have some paperwork that requires your signature. They settled in the living room while the boys played outside, their laughter drifting through open windows. Isabel looked different than she had 3 months ago, less haunted, more settled, like someone who'd finally laid old ghosts to rest. Lucien's appeals have been exhausted, she said, opening the folder. His conviction is final, which means we can close the civil cases as well. The restitution funds will be distributed to his victims, including compensation for the emotional distress he caused you and the boys. Trinica scanned the documents, seeing numbers that would ensure her sons' futures were completely secure. College, graduate school, whatever dreams they chose to pursue, all possible now. There's something else, Isabel continued. A personal matter. My brother asked me to give you this. She pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and cream-colored. He wanted you to have all the information before making any decisions about the housing project proposal. The envelope was heavy in Trinica's hands, and she could feel papers inside, multiple documents, official-looking. What is it? Everything, Isabel said simply. His complete financial records, psychological evaluations from therapy he's been attending, character references from people who've known him for years. Medical records proving his sister, me, was never actually in danger from Lucien because we staged my disappearance. She paused. And a letter explaining why he did what he did, how he's changed, and what he hopes for the future. Trinica set the envelope aside unopened. Why are you really here, Isabel? Because my brother is miserable without you. Because he's turned down every business opportunity that doesn't somehow benefit your community. Because he talks about you and your boys like they are the most important people in the world. Her voice softened. And because I think you might be miserable without him too. I'm not miserable. I'm independent. There's a difference. Is there? Isabel's smile was knowing. You've built an amazing life, Trinica. You're helping people, raising incredible children, creating positive change. But when was the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that made you happy instead of proud? The question hit unexpectedly deep. Trinica had been so focused on building security, on proving she could thrive alone, that she'd forgotten to consider whether thriving meant more than just surviving. He's not the same man who manipulated you, Isabel continued. Falling in love with you changed him. Watching you fight for your children, seeing the strength you found in yourself, it made him want to be worthy of that strength. And you think he is? Worthy? I think he's trying to be. I think he wakes up every day asking himself what kind of man you'd want in your sons' lives, and then he tries to become that man. Isabel stood to leave. But ultimately, that's for you to decide. After she left, Trinica sat with the unopened envelope in her lap while her boys' voices filled the backyard. Marcus was explaining soccer rules to his brothers, his voice patient and encouraging. Matthias was building something elaborate in the sandbox. Michael was chasing butterflies with the pure joy only 6-year-olds could muster. They were happy, secure, thriving in ways she'd never imagined possible during those dark years of struggle. And they'd done it together, the 4 of them, without needing anyone else to complete their family. But maybe that was exactly why she could afford to take risks now. Maybe strength meant not just the ability to survive alone, but the confidence to choose connection from a position of power rather than desperation. She opened the envelope. The letter was handwritten on simple paper, nothing fancy or manipulative about it. Just honest words from a man who'd spent 3 months learning the difference between loving someone and trying to save them. Trinica, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a second chance. I just want you to know that meeting you changed everything I thought I knew about love, about family, about what it means to be a good man. For 2 years, I told myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself, from the guilt of my sister's pain, from the fear that I wasn't strong enough to love someone without trying to control their circumstances. You taught me that real love means trusting someone to make their own choices, even when those choices might not include you. You taught me that strength isn't about having power over others, but about empowering them to discover their own power. I'm not asking you to trust me again. I'm asking for the chance to entrust one never deserved in the first place. Not as your rescuer or protector, but as your partner, your equal, your friend. The housing project is yours regardless of your answer. The business proposal stands with or without my involvement. Your success has nothing to do with me and everything to do with who you are. But if you're willing, I'd like to be part of the amazing life you're building. Not because you need me, but because I need to be the kind of man worthy of being chosen by someone like you. All my love. Cassian. P.S. Marcus asked me last month when I was coming back to teach him chess. I told him that was up to his mother. I'm still waiting for an answer. Trinica smiled despite herself. Of course Marcus had cornered Cassian about chess. Her oldest son had been fascinated by the game since seeing it played in a movie, but she'd never learned it herself. Mama. Marcus appeared in the doorway, grass-stained and curious. You're smiling at that paper. Is it good news? Maybe. She looked at her son, so perceptive, so ready to love, so deserving of seeing his mother happy instead of just strong. What would you think if Mama invited a friend for dinner sometime? The chess man. The chess man. Marcus's face lit up like Christmas morning. Could he teach me the one where the horse moves funny? The knight. And yes, probably. Then yes. He paused, his expression growing serious. But only if he makes you smile like you used to. Before the sad times. The sad times. Her children had never known the details of those years, but they'd felt the weight of them, the careful budgeting of joy, the way their mother had rationed happiness like a finite resource. He might, she said honestly. But you know what? I'm learning to smile on my own too. I know. Marcus climbed onto the couch beside her. But maybe smiling with friends is even better. That evening, after the boys were in bed and Maya had gone home, Trinica sat on her front porch with a cup of tea and her phone. The contact was still saved as Cassian Duval, formal and distant, but her finger hovered over the call button for only a moment before pressing it. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. Trinica. Just her name, spoken like a prayer. Marcus wants to know when you're coming back to teach him chess. A pause, then a laugh that sounded suspiciously watery. Whenever you'll have me. Tomorrow's Sunday. We usually do pancakes and yard work. Nothing fancy. I love yard work. Do you know anything about fixing garden gates? Ours sticks. I can learn. She smiled into the warm evening air, feeling something that had been tightly wound in her chest finally beginning to relax. Cassian. Yes. This isn't forgiveness. Not yet. This is just curiosity. About who we might be if we start over, honestly this time. I wouldn't want it any other way. And I need you to understand, my boys and I, we're complete as we are. We don't need saving or fixing or improving. If you're coming into our lives, it's as an addition to something already whole, not as a solution to problems that don't exist. I understand. I want to be worthy of being chosen, not needed. After they hung up, Trinica sat in the growing darkness, listening to the sounds of her neighborhood, dogs barking, music playing, the distant hum of traffic carrying people toward their uncomplicated, beautiful lives. 3 months ago, she'd been terrified of losing everything. Tonight, she was choosing to risk everything she'd built for the possibility of something even better. But the difference was choice. Agency. The knowledge that whatever happened next, she was entering it from strength, not desperation. Her phone buzzed with a text, "Thank you for the chance. I won't waste it." She typed back, "See you tomorrow. Bring work gloves." And as she locked up the house and checked on her sleeping boys, Trinica Blake realized she'd come full circle from that desperate woman crying over a wedding invitation. She was still a single mother, still protecting her children, still building a life from whatever materials she could find. But now she was doing it from choice, not circumstance. From power, not fear. From love that knew its own worth. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibility. Business ventures to build. Children to raise. A community to serve. And maybe, just maybe, a partnership to explore with a man who'd learned the difference between loving someone and trying to control their story. Whatever came next, she'd face it as herself, completely, authentically, unapologetically herself. And her children would grow up knowing their mother as a woman who'd transformed pain into purpose, isolation into community, and fear into the fierce, unshakable knowledge that love, real love, was always a choice made from strength. As she turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Trinica caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Same face, same eyes, but somehow completely transformed. The woman looking back at her wasn't someone who'd survived. She was someone who'd conquered. And tomorrow, she'd teach her sons that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love again, even when you don't need it. Especially when you don't need it. Because that's when love becomes not a rescue, but a celebration. What did this story teach you about the difference between needing someone and choosing them? About the power that comes from rebuilding your life on your own terms? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see love, strength, and the courage to start over. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from everything familiar and build something better from scratch.